David, how's your house looking? I mean, NAB says you're going to go up by 3%. Is that enough? Volatile markets, are you happy with little Brisbane property rallying by 3%? How does the property market look up there in Queensland?
Yeah, it's looking all right, Mark, and what we're starting to see is there's been reportedly a lot of people starting to look for property that have been shut out of the Sydney market, and certainly investors starting to move from Sydney and Melbourne up towards Brisbane. But certainly we're starting to see some of the prices for your general house certainly getting up there again. So yeah, I think we're probably starting to move into a bit of a slowing phase in the housing cycle in Brisbane.
I think it's one of those things that there's a difference between slowing phase and prices dropping in value, and that's one of the things to think about. You and I have been speaking about it's a volatile market. There is volatility in different asset classes, and equities has obviously got the most volatility. What are you telling customers right now about, and think of it this way, the way I'm looking at it, you go to holidays in December, you come back in late January, and what happened? And so it's a bit of a shock if you've turned the paper, down and just look at the sport. So what are you telling customers?
Yeah, and that's certainly the case. We sort of started the year with a fairly positive outlook on markets, and yeah, we started January with a terrible month, and it certainly hasn't got a lot better so far. So we're down about 7% in terms of the Australian share market so far this calendar year. Mm-hmm. But in reality, volatility is a key part of investments, and it's been in investment markets ever since the advent of investing. It will be here for certainly the short to medium term. So in terms of what we're telling clients, it's really to stick to your long-term investment strategy, not get too concerned about the daily movements of the markets. If you take the last 2 days into account, we're down about 12 points from where we were at the start of the week. So the short-term daily volatility is really something that we're trying to not pay too much attention to, and look for opportunities when they appear. I was into a meeting. It was a long one. I was there for 3 hours. I came back. BHP were down, let's say, I don't know, 6.5%. And then I went in today and I did some work, and I looked up and BHP were up 5.5% or whatever it was. And you just look at that and you think, if you're watching that market, that could create a headache. And I don't know that that's necessarily the answer. I think it's more around that portfolio construction to some extent. Oh, that's exactly right. Yeah, and I think they finished up about 8% today, and Rio up about 9%. So, yeah, Lord. Certainly the daytime movements have been very extreme, and even very much on a short-term basis. And I think what we are seeing in the markets globally is a lot of the high-frequency trading, which is having a very big impact on those short-term price movements. So we're really looking at good quality long-term assets, buying them at good prices and holding them for a long period of time. Most of our clients are looking at their superannuation and investing through self-managed super funds, so they're more concerned about the income. And I guess that's one of the important things that we're impressing upon people, is that the short-term movements of share prices and even the movements of hybrid prices don't have an impact on the income that they're going to be paying. Yeah, we can talk about a little bit about fixed income later on in the show, but I want to bring Kevin into the show. And Kevin, you're a long-standing friend of mine, but let's just give it to the folks. You're the member for Page. Tell me all about it in 30 words or less. I mean, tell me where Page is and how fantastic it is, and I think it's get on that soapbox and let me know what you think of the place.
30 words would never be enough, Mark, but Page takes
You're
in
a politician, of course
communities takes in communities like Kyogle, Lismore, Grafton, Yambara, Iluka, Woolgoolga. Soon it will take in that as well. Great place to live, great place to have a holiday, and I encourage everyone to come up for a holiday and spend some time. You will love it. It
is a great place to have a holiday, and Kevin's working hard to make it an even better place. So, mate, you're a backbencher, so no one listens to you except for me. But you are on the Banking and Finance Committee. That may not be exactly how you describe it. You could tell us what that committee is. But you essentially speak to the RBA Governor on a regular basis about questions that you might think are relevant. How do you think volatility plays out in your conversations with the RBA Governor? Is that something, when you get a chance to talk to him, that you want to bring up, where asset prices are going and what it's doing to retirees, for example?
Look, not so much volatility, Mark, but certainly where levels are. I know the Governor of the Reserve Bank 12 months ago was exceptionally concerned about how high the Australian dollar was, and we've obviously seen that drop off with the fall off in mineral prices. So that's fallen almost 40%. I think he's happy with that. I think we're happy with that. Obviously it helps our exports. So those absolute levels are important. But look, daily moves, obviously, with some of the ones you've been quoting today, isn't something that we look at, and I don't think necessarily the Governor is too concerned about with that. But having said that, when you see the falls that we have in the share market, that is taking away the net wealth or net worth of people, and that's obviously a concern. But we've seen volatility in markets since they've existed, so it's obviously something that we just have to live with.
And just for the folks at home, Kevin actually, we became friends because he was in markets. So he might talk about markets, but he talks also about the fact that he has it from experience because he was doing cash and fixed income and all sorts of things way back in the day. David, if I could ask you, in terms of volatile markets, are you seeing a lot more people pile into cash? Is that an alternative that you're seeing clients have excess cash in their portfolios, if you like?
Oh, they certainly have excess cash now. I haven't really seen over the last couple of months too many people moving more into cash, I think. If anything, we're probably taking a bit of advantage of the current opportunities that are there. As I said earlier, we're about buying good quality assets at good prices, and what we're seeing now are pretty good prices. So I haven't seen too much fear at the moment in terms of our client base, and I think what we've seen in the markets over the last 6 months or so, investors are starting to get a little bit more used to it, and I guess as far as what we do for clients is have a diversified portfolio. So having exposure to listed property, international investments did very well over 2015, and that mitigated some of the poor performance we saw out of the Australian share market.
Kevin, when I hear David talk about having a balanced portfolio, you know, that all makes sense. The reality is that not everyone listens to David, and a lot of people are switched off advisors, so they might have a barbell approach where they've got a lot of equities and they have a lot of cash. And cash rate, it may not be going down, but it doesn't look like it's going up globally. That cash piece then starts to eat into the performance. So as a government, does it ever worry you that ultimately the self-directed, or even not even the self-directed, you know, Australian investors run out of money and then knock on the door of the government and say, look, give me a pension? And by that I mean, are you worried that they don't invest, as David was just describing, in a balanced portfolio? Does that ever come up in the conversations?
Well, look, certainly the total value of our savings always comes up in our conversation. We have a great superannuation system in Australia, I think. I think it's nearly approaching $2 trillion now. It was over $1.5 trillion when I last read about it. So that is a great pool of money. Obviously, we want people to have superannuation that is successful and growing, because their reliance on the pension becomes less and less. So absolutely, it's an important system to us. We like to see those funds do well, people invest wisely, and as David said, for the longer term, so that they have greater returns. The more money people have personally, the less they will be relying on government when they retire, and that's obviously good for government and the taxpayer.
But you're not inclined, and this is you personally, so, I mean, speak about yourself personally or for the government, I don't mind, but you're not inclined to want to try and construct a narrative that says, okay, you should have this amount of fixed income, this amount of cash, this amount, or try and work out some way of helping people like David take control of the conversation about what a balanced portfolio is, because clearly not everyone's listening, and a lot of people are invested, you know, in volatile assets and not really aware of the volatility. So does the government feel it's got a role to play in the education, if you like, about how to invest, where to invest, you know, getting some sense of control over your own destiny?
Well, to a degree, Mark, obviously within the education system we need to play a role so that people are economically illiterate as we can get them. But I certainly personally don't believe that government should play a role in advocating investments or talking about balanced funds and how much you should have. I don't think that's a role government should play. It's a sector, it's a personal choice thing that I think people do need to educate themselves. We need to help them educate themselves. But, you know, it's a personal decision, and there's obviously a role that people are going to be either more conservative or aggressive with their investments. That needs to sit their personality, and it's certainly not something that I think government should regulate.
And for the viewers that are Evan is from the member page, you can reach him on Facebook and do all that sort of stuff. And if you do, ask him to tell you about his email investing story, because that's one of the great stories about when he talks about targeting investments. That was the best one. We're going to take a very short break. We'll be coming straight back after a word from our sponsors. Hope you're enjoying the show.
The challenge and the beauty of filmmaking is capturing what's in your imagination and bringing that to life.
Now through technology, we have the opportunity to reinvent the way we do things.
When I'm travelling, I have the ability to take snippets of video, location scout, and then easily send it back to Jared in Australia.
Not many people get to go to work each day with their best mate.